You know that little blue and white roundel. It's bolted onto the hood of every tailgating maniac who treats the fast lane like his personal living room. And there's this cozy little fairy tale everybody repeats. The BMW logo is a spinning airplane propeller against the blue Bavarian sky. Sky, freedom, aviation, adorable, a perfect bedtime story. It's a lie, and honestly, not even the interesting lie. So today, we're going to find out why the propeller story is marketing garbage invented decades after the fact, what BMW is actually building when the rest of the world is on fire, who the Quandts are, and why a German family worth 30-something billion euros really didn't want you asking questions. How a single documentary in 2007 forced one of the richest dynasties in Europe to finally open its mouth. And why your shiny new 3 Series has a great-grandfather nobody in Munich likes. To talk about, buckle up, this one's not a fun ride. It's just a true one. Chapter 1. The Propeller Fairy Tale. Let's kill the cute story first. BMW, Bayerische Motorenwerke, was born in 1916, building aircraft engines for the German military during the First World War. So far, so aviation. And yes, early on the company did make engines that spun propellers. That part is technically true. But the logo? The blue and white roundel actually comes from the colors of the Bavarian flag. Bavaria, the region. The company just couldn't legally slap the state flag on a product. So they flipped the colors around and called it a day. That's it. That's the whole origin. It's a spinning propeller idea didn't show up until 1929 in an advertisement. A picture of a BMW logo photoshopped, basically, onto a moving aircraft propeller. Marketing. Decades later, everybody just agreed it was the official story because it sounds nicer than we couldn't use the flag for legal reasons. So already, before we get anywhere near the dark stuff, BMW's own brand identity is built on a more flattering version of events. Keep that in mind. It's kind of the whole theme of this video. After the First World War, Germany lost, and the Treaty of Versailles banned the country from building military aircraft engines. Inconvenient, when that's your entire business. So BMW pivoted. Motorcycles. Then, in 1928, cars. The company that supposedly loves the open sky got into the car game, basically, because it wasn't allowed to do anything else. And for a while, that's a normal corporate survival story. Company adapts. Company sells motorcycles. Company makes a nice little sedan. Fine. Boring. Wholesome. And then the 1930s happen. And wholesome packs its bags and leaves. Chapter 2. When the factory went to war. Here's the uncomfortable truth nobody puts in the brochure. When the Nazis came to power, the German aircraft engine ban quietly evaporated, and BMW went straight back to its first love, building engines for warplanes. By the time the Second World War was running at full volume, BMW was not a quirky car maker that happened to be in Germany. BMW was a core engine supplier for the Luftwaffe, the Nazi Air Force. Their engines powered fighter planes. Their factories were a pillar of the war machine. And here's the part that actually matters. The part that isn't about logos or engines. It's about people. To keep those factories running, BMW used forced labor, prisoners of war, people deported from occupied countries, and concentration camp prisoners, including inmates from Dachau, tens of thousands of human beings, made to work in brutal conditions, who were never asked and never paid, building the engines of the people who imprisoned them. I want to be really clear here, because this is the one place in the video where I'm not joking. The dark humor is for the corporations and the cowards. It is not for these people. They were not cheap labor. They were not a line item. They were victims of one of the worst crimes in human history. And a car company you can walk into a dealership and buy from today was, at that time, directly built on their suffering. That's not a conspiracy theory. That's not an internet rumor. That is documented, accepted history. And when the war ended, BMW's factories were bombed, stripped, and the company was on its knees. You'd think, okay, the war's over, time to come clean, time to reckon with all of that. Yeah, about that. Chapter 3. The Quandt Empire. Now meet the family. Because this story isn't really about a logo. It's about money and the people who kept it. Gunther Quandt was a German industrialist, the kind of man who made a fortune in the First World War selling uniforms and equipment to the army, and then made an even bigger fortune in the Second World War doing the heavy industry version of the same thing: batteries, weapons, ammunition. His companies, like BMW, used forced and concentration camp labor. Some of those workers died on site. Fun little detail. And I use the word fun with a knife in my hand. Gunther Quandt's ex-wife, Magda, went on to marry Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda minister. Gunther's son, Harold, was raised partly in that household. So this family wasn't standing politely near the regime. They were inside the building. After the war, Gunther Quandt was classified in denazification proceedings, basically as a follower of the regime, and walked away with his industrial empire intact. Process complete. Reputation lightly dusted off. Wealth untouched. Decades later, in 1959, BMW was once again about to collapse. Almost sold off to Mercedes. Yes, the eternal rival nearly owned them, and the family that swooped in and rescued BMW, buying up a massive controlling stake, the Quandts, Herbert and Harold Quandt. To this day, the Quandt family owns a huge chunk of BMW. They are one of the wealthiest families in Germany. That blue and white roundel, it pays for their world. So the empire survived the war. The empire survived denazification. The empire bought BMW. And the one thing the empire absolutely did not do for about half a century was talk about where the foundation came from. Chapter 4. 40 years of silence. For decades, the Quandt family said essentially nothing about their Nazi-era history. No reckoning. No public accounting. The forced labor. The camp workers. Gunther's record. All of it sat quietly in a vault while the family collected dividends and the company sold the world its Propeller fairy tale. And then, in 2007, a German documentary aired. Its title translates roughly to The Silence of Quandts. It laid the family's wartime history out in front of a national television audience. Forced labor, concentration camp workers, the Goebbels connection, all of it on screen in prime time. You cannot unair a documentary. The silence was over whether the family liked it or not, and the response was telling. The Quandts announced they would fund an independent historian to fully research the family's Nazi-era activities. Years later, that study came back and confirmed the worst of it. Yes, the family's companies used forced labor. Yes, the family was deeply entangled with the regime. The family publicly acknowledged it and expressed regret. Now, I'll give credit where it's due. Commissioning a real independent study and not bearing the result is more than a lot of dynasties ever do. That's genuinely something. But let's not get misty-eyed. It took a documentary. It took being named on national television. 60 years after fact, with the last survivors mostly gone. The reckoning didn't come from conscience. It came from a camera crew. The truth didn't walk out of that vault. Somebody had to drag it out. Outro. So here's where we land. BMW today makes genuinely brilliant cars. Nobody's arguing that. And modern BMW, the company, has acknowledged its forced labor history. It's in their own published history. They've contributed to compensation funds for survivors. Credit for that. Real credit. But the next time someone tells you that little roundel is a propeller spinning in a clear blue sky, you'll know. It's a flag they weren't allowed to use, dressed up as a romantic story. And behind the brand sits a fortune that rolled through the darkest decade of the 20th century and came out the other side richer. History doesn't disappear because a company stops mentioning it. It just waits, quietly, in a vault, until somebody with a camera comes knocking. Drive safe, ask questions, and maybe be a little suspicious of any story that makes a powerful look that clean. That's it from me. Catch you in the next one.